Inheritance. Chapter 6. Grommlichs. Beyond the gate, Tom saw a dark tunnel stretching away in two directions, left and right. Water trickled down sloped ridges in the rock wall, transforming the floor into an uneven patchwork of stone and puddles. "What can you see?" Paul said, from within the cellar. "Not a lot." The blackness underground quickly absorbed the light from the cellar. Tom walked left, hopping from stone to stone, avoiding the wet zones. The more he advanced into the deepening gloom, the more his eyes struggled to make out the ground. I wish I had a flashlight. Without light, he could explore no further. On turning, Tom noticed a distant glow coming from the passageway behind him. As he watched, the source of light came closer. A luminous grey figure, the height of a man, approached. Tom stood motionless, hypnotised by the creature's slow, methodical movements, afraid. It had no eyes to speak of, just vague indentations where eyes should have been. Its nose and mouth, like the rest of its features, looked only partially formed. It reminded Tom of an unborn human being. Tom's head willed him to move, to escape back into the cellar, but he'd waited too long. The creature drew ever nearer with a steady, plodding gait. Already it stood between Tom and the gate. Pressing himself back against the hard rock face, Tom kept his eyes front, not daring to breathe. "It's not real, not real, not real." Over and over his mind repeated the words. Just as the creature drew level, it paused, and its ugly face swung in Tom's direction. It moved closer until its head was only inches from his. He was on the verge of crying out when it stopped, pivoted in another direction, and continued on its path, leaving Tom huddled against the wall, trembling. He backed towards the gate, keeping his eyes upon the pale form. It disappeared into the shadows. Something touched Tom's shoulder. He shrieked, imagining another creature behind him. Paul's head poked through the cellar door. "Tom, could you stop messing about and come back? I've got something to show you." Paul chattered on in his usual way. Once inside the cellar, Tom leaned against the wall and let deep breaths fill his lungs. The events of the past 5 minutes ran through his head. Paul can't have seen anything. He'd be scared witless if he had. Paul must have seen only a doorway and a tunnel. He had no idea of what had just passed by. "I've been taking a look around, and I think there's a way back up," Paul announced. "The walls down here are filled with the other halves of the triangular number pairs. I found the numbers from the magic square." After years of listening to his mother, Tom had developed a fine-tuned automatic pilot. His brain wasn't listening to Paul at all, even though his head was making nodding movements, giving the impression that he hung on Paul's every word. 15 is over there, and 45 is in this corner. That must be the way to raise the floor again." Under Paul's direction, Tom found himself pushing against the brick with 45 chiselled into it. Paul did the same on the other side of the room, where 15 had been inscribed. Just as before, the walls rumbled, but this time the floor lifted. Tom stared at the entrance to the tunnel. Inch by inch, the rising floor closed the gap. Finally, it reached the level of the cellar and sealed off access to the gate below. Relief swept through him. "It's closed. Nothing can follow us now." He wondered whether he should tell Paul about the tunnel creature. No, Paul's frightened of his own shadow. No reason to freak him out. "That was incredible," said Paul. "We'll have to research the house. Find out where that tunnel's supposed to lead. I'll ask my dad if he knows anything. This place has a bit of a reputation around here." "Reputation?" Yes, you know. Local stories, urban legends, that sort of thing. Didn't you know this place is supposed to be haunted? No. Tom had never believed in ghosts, but after the day's events, his grasp of reality was stretching. Oh, there are tons of stories. There was even one woman who claimed she was possessed, said that a malevolent spirit forced her to do things against her will. I think she was the housekeeper of the old man who lived here before. My grandfather's housekeeper? I think so. But Paul, Tom said, as they walked back up the steps from the cellar. Apart from your dad, can we keep this to ourselves? The last thing he wanted was to have Paul telling anyone at school about dragons in his bedroom or creepy tunnels under the house. Sure, any secret's safe with me. When Paul had gone, Tom mooched up to his room and sat down heavily on the bed. His behaviour lately didn't make any sense. He'd developed a ridiculous obsession with dragons, and this afternoon it had felt like someone was controlling him. What did Paul say? A woman claimed she was possessed. At dinner that evening, Tom eyed his mother, wondering what she knew about the cottage. They had moved in only 4 weeks before, but surely she must have lived here at some point. After all, the cottage had been in the family for hundreds of years. Mum, he asked, as he scooped up some mashed potato with his fork. When you were young, did you spend a lot of time in this house? His mother was reading a folded newspaper next to her dinner plate, her smartly cut chestnut hair falling forwards around her face. She didn't bother to look up. No, thank God. I hated the place. I only ever lived with your Gran in the south. Did Gran hate it too? Lifting her head, his mother swept her hair back into place. Your granddad devoted his entire life to this house. That's why she left him. It may look quaint and old-worldy from the outside, with its thatched roof and wooden beams everywhere, but it was never a home. She must have hated it. When Victor and I were kids, she didn't want us anywhere near it. Victor. His uncle had died in a car accident years back. Why come back here then? Tom insisted. He'd asked the question before. Maybe this time he would get an answer. His mother sighed. It was the sound of weariness, of a past she wanted to forget. This is going to sound very mercenary, Tom, but we're here for the money. Under the terms of the will, I can't sell this place. But if we live here for at least a year, then I'll receive a trust fund. I know you didn't want to move from London, but if we hadn't come, then I would have lost my inheritance. She began reading again. I heard a funny story about the house today. Well, about Grandad's housekeeper. Tom tried to keep his voice casual, as though he was just passing on meaningless chit-chat. The story goes that she thought she was possessed by a spirit. His mother made no reply. Did something happen to her? Tom stared his mother straight in the eyes. She lifted her head, then turned her eyes away, as though searching for words. She said something happened. That doesn't mean it did. Tom, people can be very ill in the head, and sometimes they appear quite normal. Mrs. Donahue had a mental problem, which eventually led to her incarceration in a hospital. But she thought she was possessed. His mother's lips had formed a tight, thin line. Yes, she answered. But that's enough talk of the house for one evening. Eat your dinner now. It's going cold. She buried herself back in her newspaper. Tom spent the rest of the meal batting the idea of a malevolent spirit around in his head. When he thought about it, nothing malevolent had really happened to him. Annoying things, yes, but not entirely bad. And somehow it all seemed to fit together. The dragon obsession, the archway, the gate through to the tunnel. He could still remember how his body had moved against his will, as though something had been inside him, pushing him. Once dinner was over, Tom headed back down to the cellar. He stood in front of the arch, as though in prayer to some ancient god. "Tell me what I'm supposed to do," he said in a low voice. The anteroom maintained its sober silence. "At least tell me why I keep thinking about dragons. Come on, there must be a reason for all this." Tom turned away. "They'll be locking me up like Mrs. Donahue soon," he muttered. He took one last look at the arch and started back towards the stairs. A light cough came from behind him. Tom stopped. Still facing the stairs, he listened. "You have to fight a dragon," a voice said. Pivoting, Tom surveyed the room. He saw brick walls, stone flagstones, and the arch, but nothing else. His pulse raced as a mix of fear and excitement swelled inside him. If there's really someone here, show yourself. In one spot, near the archway, the air shimmered, then flickered, until a semi-transparent figure materialized. The face was that of a boy, only a few years older than Tom, dressed in a white shirt and sleeveless grey jumper. His head hung down, and his hands were sullenly buried in the pockets of his black flannel trousers. A week ago, even a few days ago, Tom would have said that there was no such thing as ghosts. But standing face to face with one, the logical voice in his head was speechless. Instead, Tom wanted to know more. With curiosity, he walked in a circle around the spirit. Through the boy's body, he could see the outline of the red bricks behind. Tom reached out a hand and poked a finger into the boy's shoulder. "Whoa, you can't go round poking ghosts like that," the ghost complained. "It's not polite." "Polite," spluttered Tom. "It seems to me that polite must be way down on the list of bad manners compared to what you've been doing." The ghost gave a lopsided grin. "No hard feelings?" he said, holding out one hand as though to shake on it. "I'm Edwin, by the way. Eddie to my friends." Tom hesitated. Do I really want to shake its hand? Tom stretched out a hand as though he were about to pat a Rottweiler on the head. When he touched the spirit, he only felt a slight chill in his palm, rather than anything solid to grasp. Eddie grinned awkwardly and let his arm drop. "Okay, but you have to tell me why you're haunting me." "Haunting you?" said Eddie, with an indignant expression on his face. "I'm not haunting you. I'm not that sort of ghost. I was just trying to give you a helping hand, that's all." "A helping hand to do what?" Tom wanted to know. The ghost smoothed his hair back in a nervous gesture. "There's a curse, and according to this curse, just after your grandfather dies, a dragon will wake up." He took a few paces before he spoke again. "You're the next male heir, which means that you have to kill it." A dragon. With a ghost standing in front of him, Tom couldn't not believe in ghosts. But who in his right mind would believe in dragons? "Okay." Try as he might, his voice still sounded doubtful. "I knew it," said Eddie. "You don't believe me. If nothing's done to stop it, Warwick will become a dark place filled with misery and fear. If I can't make you understand, then this is all a complete waste of time." No, I do," Tom assured him, even though he didn't. What about that thing in the tunnel? What was it?" "The Grommlich, you mean?" said Eddie. "Grommlichs won't hurt you. Just think of them as angels, only without the wings, and without the beautiful golden hair, or the long flowing robes." Tom walked through the arch, then spun around. "You're not telling me that hideously ugly creature was an angel?" "Well, not exactly. They're spirits that guide the dead through the netherworld. Think of them more as tour guides." The netherworld. Tom thought back. What did Paul say about the arch? That people might have believed it was a gate into hell. Does this tunnel lead to... Eddie had cocked his head to one side, as though listening for something. "He's calling me. Have to skedaddle. I shouldn't have let you see me, you know. He'll kill me if he finds out." He gave an awkward smile. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Then Eddie vanished. A few days later, Tom took the bus home. So crowded was it, he spent much of the journey pressed against the window pane. As it approached the centre of town, it passed through the small, narrow streets of the old district, where the hulking form of Warwick Castle dominated. In the summer months, the castle drew thousands of tourists, who milled around the medieval streets seeking souvenirs. Today, the sand-coloured castle walls were dull under the brooding clouds. "Everything here is so old," he thought. Living in Warwick was like stepping back into the Middle Ages. The bus stopped to take on pupils from the nearby girls' school. Tom gazed through the window as a group of girls queued to get onto the bus. Something grey drifted across his vision, and a memory stirred. Tom struggled to focus on whatever it was that had triggered it. When his eyes did focus, the sight before him was surreal, and he shook his head to make sure he wasn't mistaken. But no, it was still there, a pale grey creature with half-formed limbs. It was a Grommlich, standing next to a girl of roughly Tom's age, with a shock of auburn curls for hair. Nobody seemed to take any notice of it. As far as he could make out, no one but he could see it. Even as he watched, the creature bent low over the girl and took a long, deep breath, tasting her odour. Mesmerised by the scene, Tom stayed glued to the inside of the bus window. Passers-by didn't see the Grommlich. People seemed to move around it, never walking through the space it occupied, as though, unconsciously, they sensed it. The girl didn't see it, but she looked unsettled and shivered. Did the Grommlich affect her, weaken her in some way? The bus, now full, released its brakes and continued on its path. Tom craned his neck to keep the girl at the bus stop in sight. Then the bus turned a corner, and she was gone. The image of the auburn-haired girl and the Grommlich haunted his thoughts. In the space of 2 days, Tom had seen 2 Grommlichs. More importantly, he'd seen one of them above ground, in a normal street full of people, and yet he was the only one to see it. Why? Tom had to go back and find out more. When the bus jerked to a stop, he didn't hesitate. He pushed his way through the throng of passengers and burst from the doors, sprinting back towards the bus stop where she'd been standing. The sound of his footsteps pounding on the pavement filled his head. As he turned the corner, he saw her, still with the Grommlich at her side, like a great grey vulture. Then a schoolboy scuffle occurred on the pavement behind the girl. A boy catapulted into her. She fell forwards. Tom tried to shout a warning, but it was lost in the noise of the traffic. The girl's arms reached outwards, flailing desperately to block her fall. But her hands found only air. Her body tumbled into the oncoming traffic. In Tom's head, there was only silence, as her body disappeared beneath an immense black jeep. Still Tom ran, only more slowly now. By the time he reached the jeep, he struggled to put one foot in front of the other. It was an enormous effort for him to look, but he had to do it. He needed to understand. Strangely, the scene that met his eyes behind the car was peaceful. The Grommlich carried the girl in its arms. Not her body, but a transparent reflection of it. With a calm face, she stared curiously at something which lay on the road. Tom followed the direction of her eyes, where the empty shell of her real body lay sprawled upon the tarmac. She was dead. When Tom looked back towards the Grommlich, it still plodded through the gathering crowd, cradling the girl's reflection.